just say pause or redo. Give yourself some sort of visual or auditory cue as you're going back and editing it. Choose whether to record it all straight, mistakes included, or punch and roll. And we've talked about this a little bit more, and I'll just summarize. Generally, I'm a fan of straight recording. There are a number of different ways that people use to describe it. But basically, if you have an issue, don't get yourself out of the flow. Just say pause or redo. Give yourself some sort of visual or auditory cue as you're going back and editing it, and then just jump right back into it. Versus punch and roll, which is a little bit more of an involved editing technique. If you're comfortable with using your recording software, this might be a little bit easier. But basically, you make a mistake, you realize, I didn't like how that came out. Let's punch it, roll it back to right before that mistake, re-record it, and then keep going. The advantage to that is, theoretically, when it comes to the editing process, it's going to be smoother. You're not going to have to listen to and remove as many additional takes. You may still have some may slip through depending on your workflow and all of that. But theoretically, it's going to make it easier to edit, clean, and master the files when you get to that stage, as opposed to keeping all of the editing almost on the post-production side. The trade-off, the downside, in my estimation, in my opinion, is, again, it can pull you out of the recording, especially if you are doing something like a fiction work, if you do have multiple voices, if you are kind of getting into the flow of something from an actor's standpoint or a performance standpoint. You can really pull yourself out. Wait, okay, never mind, forget that, cut, go back. It can be a little bit harder to recapture that magic. So it's up to you. There are different recommendations or different approaches, but decide what you're going to do. Learn a little bit about either approach and see what works best as you're working on it.
The only thing I would add there is, once you start your book, stick with either one of these. You don't want to be jumping back and forth because they both have a little bit of a learning process, and you have to figure out what's best for you there. So I wouldn't suggest switching back and forth. I'm going to do one chapter like this and the other like that, because that's going to make it even harder when you go to edit and do the mastering and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Great point.